Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. I've noticed in the comments of recent World of Warships videos that I've been putting up that people are giving me a hard time for not using premium consumables on my ship, and yet in the very same video I'll also see in the comments people giving me a hard time for using premium flags on my ship. It's just one of those internet situations where you're screwed if you do and you're screwed if you don't. And yet, on the subject of signal flags, I make absolutely no apologies for having every available flag flying on every available ship I take into battle because, well, what else am I supposed to do with them? World of Warships throws bundles of these flags at you just for playing the game and not sucking. And if you take part in ranked battles, well, pretty soon you're going to have more flags than you know what to do with. I've only just recently started playing ranked battles, never tried them before. As you can see, I've only gotten as far as rank 18, but it's an incredibly profitable way of playing World of Warships if you're even halfway competent. It works like this. Everybody starts off at rank 22, and you can't lose rank 22, and it only requires one victory star, i.e. win one battle, to advance to rank 21. So just to recap that, win one battle, regardless of how many defeats you sustain along the way, and you get advanced to rank 21. And for getting promoted to rank 21, the game throws a whole bunch of signal flags at you. Rank 21, you also cannot lose. Doesn't matter how many defeats you suffer, you will stay at rank 21 until you gain 2 victory stars to advance to rank 20. At rank 20, you also will not lose any stars for any defeats or draws at that rank. And upon reaching rank 20, the game throws even more free stuff at you here, a bunch of premium camouflages for your ships. Again, from here it takes 2 victories to advance to rank 19. And again, you don't lose stars for a defeat. At rank 19, this is where things start to change. At rank 19, you can start to actually lose victory stars for a defeat or a draw, unless you're the top experience earner on the losing team, in which case your victory stars are safe. And once again, upon reaching rank 19, the game throws even more free stuff at you. If you end up being reduced to 0 victory stars, you will be busted back down to rank 20, but you can never go any lower than rank 20. 2 victory stars are required to advance to rank 18, which is where I am at the moment. I haven't actually been doing rank battles for very long. And you're beginning to get the picture by now, lots of free stuff for advancing to rank 18. At rank 18, things start to get a bit more difficult. Now you require 3 victory stars to advance to the next rank. And this is pretty much how the pattern continues. To just start taking part in ranked battles, all you need is a tier 5 or 6 warship, and you can quite happily plug away using ships of that kind of tier up to and including rank 16. From rank 15 and up, it's tier 6 and 7 warships. And you can play tier 6 and 7 warships all the way up to rank 2. The only time you're going to require anything higher than that is if you somehow manage to reach the lofty heights of rank 1, where you'll be playing tier 10 warships only against other rank 1 players. And it's definitely worth doing because you don't require high tier ships in order to take part until you reach rank 1, which, let's face it, most people aren't going to do. And the amount of rewards that you get simply for taking part and not being completely terrible are well worth the effort. So if you've ever seen me online in World of Warships over the course of the last week, this is pretty much what I've been doing prior to heading down to Dorset on the weekend for the Armour and Embarkation event that I talked about in yesterday's Mingles with Jingles. And I'm going to show you a couple of the battles that I enjoyed along the way. And we're going to kick off with the very first ranked battle that I ever played. Rank 22, can't go any lower, all you have to do is win one game, regardless of how many defeats you suffer, and you'll be advanced to rank 21 and get a bunch of signal flags for your trouble. I'm in the Molotov, it's the Russian, or Soviet, if we're going to be completely precise, tier 6 cruiser. And I really haven't played this ship very much, but I must remember that it has torpedoes. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. Now, hopefully the first thing you've noticed is that when you're playing a ranked battle, the teams are much, much smaller. There are only 7 players per side, as opposed to anything up to 15 per side in a regular random battle. Now, what that means is that your performance matters more in a ranked battle, because there are fewer other players to take up the slack and cover up any mistakes that you might make. You, in your one ship, comprise a bigger percentage of your team's strength in a ranked battle than you do in a random battle. So what you do matters more. Now that's a good thing and a bad thing. If you're pretty bad at World of Warships, that's a bad thing, because it means the rest of your team have to work that little bit harder to carry you. But if you're pretty good at World of Warships, what you do has a much greater influence on the outcome of the battle than if you were playing a random battle with 15 players per side. Now, of course, that also means that the effect of somebody going AFK in the battle has a much, much greater effect on your team's chances of success or failure. If one person goes AFK in a 15-player per side game, it's bad news for the team that that player belongs to. In a 15-player per team random battle, if one player's AFK, that's 6.6% of your team that's combat ineffective. If you're in a 7 versus 7 ranked battle, that's over 14% of your team that's combat ineffective, and it's a lot harder to come back from that. And that is going to have repercussions in this particular battle. Now, looking at the actual teams, we've got 2 battleships, so do they. We have 3 cruisers, they only have 2, and they have 2 destroyers, and we only have 1. On our team, aside from myself and the Molotov, our other 2 cruisers are a Königsberg and a Furutaka. They're about to have one of their destroyers deleted, if I have anything to say about it. We also have a Nicholas-class destroyer, and a Congo and a Fuso-class battleship. So what that means is we've got the cruiser advantage, we've got the DPM advantage. Our team can push out more firepower faster than the enemy team can, but we can only do that as long as we keep our cruisers alive. And that Königsberg over there is definitely going balls deep against that Nicholas. Now, I've knocked the Nicholas's torpedo tubes out, but I'm pretty sure he managed to get his torpedoes away. He's used his damage control ability after having his engine knocked out earlier. But the Königsberg is determined to sink that Nicholas, and you'll notice that the Nicholas is not trying to run away. Instead, he's turning around and sailing broadside on to the Königsberg. And the only reason he can be doing that is to get torpedoes away from the other side of the ship. But the Königsberg is just not taking the hint, and so the Nicholas does manage to get some torpedoes into him, and sinks him. There he goes. We've just lost our DPM advantage, but I managed to sink the Nicholas. So the Königsberg basically threw his ship away in order to be able to get close enough to fire some torpedoes at a destroyer. So that was a bit of a waste. Meanwhile, our Nicholas-class destroyer and the Furutaka-class cruiser have not been idle, and they've capped A. And the enemy team still haven't completely managed to finish capturing C. And even better news for the cruisers, here comes a big fat dumb tier 6 battleship. And our battleships are already taking him under fire. And with that enemy Nicholas gone, we're all pretty much guaranteed to get our first shot off against this guy without him being able to see us. Something that I'm sure the Königsberg would have enjoyed if he hadn't thrown his ship away in order to launch some torpedoes at a destroyer. The Fuso's about to sail into range, and I'm about to start having some fun with high explosives. And he's in range now, so shots out. The Molotov is quite an aggressive ship. 2 of its 3 gun turrets are located in the front of the ship. This can get you into trouble when you're shooting at battleships, because it's easy to get too close. You want to stay at a good range. Battleships are easy targets to hit with the Molotov. The guns are pretty accurate. The cruiser itself doesn't turn particularly quickly. But if you keep at the maximum range of the guns, or within 2 or 3 kilometers of the maximum range of the guns, you've got more than enough time to be able to adjust your course and speed, and be able to avoid most of the kind of return fire that's going to get sent in your direction from something like a Fuso, a Nagato, or a Congo. So, the engagement with the Fuso. You're going to see some good teamwork from our team, and some, well, terrible teamwork from the enemy. The Fuso steams in, all guns blazing. And there's nothing wrong with that, in and of itself. Except, he's got no support from the rest of his team. The New Mexico on the enemy team is only really close enough to take shots at our Furutaka and our Nicholas, and that suits me just fine. The cruisers on the enemy team are too far away to, well, shoot at anybody, and that suits me just fine. And the Fuso is getting further and further away from the rest of his team, and closer to the guns of our team, which means he's basically sailing straight into a crossfire from just about every ship on our team, except for the Nürnberg-class cruiser on our team, which I didn't mention earlier because, yes, he's AFK. So this theoretical DPM advantage that we have because we got more cruisers than the enemy team is not actually looking too good in practice. And then the enemy Königsberg actually gets close enough to hit and sink our Nicholas. So our team's DPM advantage only really exists on paper, not in practice, and we've just lost a destroyer, and the enemy team still have 1, so we don't have any scouts left on the team. The Fuso, however, is in serious trouble. He was forced to turn to avoid the torpedoes, presumably launched by the Furutaka. And that's good news for me, because even if he had been shooting at me, and he wasn't, he's shooting at the Furutaka and was shooting at the Nicholas, he's now unable to get his guns pointed in my direction. And it's even better news for the Congo, who steamed in hell for leather over there, because that meant the Fuso presented the broadside of his ship to the Congo. The Congo was able to score a citadel, all some very, very good armour-piercing penetrations, and put the Fuso on the bottom. So, that's put us slightly ahead on points, and now the Fuso isn't threatening to cap B anymore, which means I can now afford to get a bit closer and start taking some of the enemy cruisers under fire with some armour-piercing, like that Omaha, for example. Now, the Omaha just manages to get into cover right before I get him in range. Or does he? Because have a look at what he's doing. He's slowed, if not stopped, around the corner of the island. The smoke coming from his smokestacks was rising vertically and just started to move ahead of the ship, which suggests he just put the ship into reverse. So I put some shots at where I last saw him, and I am rewarded with a couple of hits. And it does look like that guy was reversing it. There he has reversed. What he did was we call it tactical beaching. He basically ran himself aground in order to stop faster so that he could turn the ship around by reversing. But I'm not entirely sure what he's trying to achieve here. Is he trying to come down this channel between the two islands where we sank the Fuso? There's not an awful lot for him to achieve there, because none of our ships are contesting that channel. And while I'm firing at him, while I'm quite safe from return fire because I'm outside of the effective range of the Omaha, all I'm doing is alerting my position, and there he is again, and it looks like he's reversing again. He is. Well, I'm probably going to get one more salvo off at him before he becomes occluded by that island, and that's probably the last shot I'm going to be able to take. And I think I do hit it. Yep, I do hit him. So I've now run out of targets to shoot at unless I chase that Omaha down, but that's going to open me up to fire from that Königsberg and that Molotov over there, and I'll just find myself in exactly the same position that the enemy Fuso was, getting shot at by most of the enemy team from multiple different directions. So instead I decide, screw it, I'm going to go around and ambush those two cruisers. And it seemed like a good plan, only then our Congo gets another monstrous citadel and basically deletes that Königsberg from existence. So that was my kill. I was going to sneak around and give these guys some surprise butt sex, but hey, I'd only get the first salvo off undetected, and at least now I only have to worry about the enemy Molotov, and I've got more health than he does. So I'm casually steaming around, heading for that narrow channel there that you can see just up ahead, about to deliver some surprise butt sex to this enemy Molotov when disaster strikes. And I get spotted, and straight away that tells me enemy destroyer. The enemy team have just lost another ship. They've got 2 cruisers and a destroyer remaining. You can see the 2 cruisers on the map. Neither of them have line of sight to me. It has to be the enemy destroyer. So I need to start being bloody careful. Now, you can use the fact that you've been spotted to help pin down the location of whoever's spotting you. He can see me here, but he can't see me here. So looking at where you are and looking at what avenues of sight are available between the various different land masses gives you an idea, and that Molotov's about to go down as well. Damn it, that was my kill too. Oh, fantastic. Well, I should at least be able to get the enemy destroyer, providing I don't blunder around a corner right into a torpedo ambush. So I'm not detected here, but I was detected around that first channel further off to the left. I launched my spotter aircraft. You never know, he might have forgotten to disable his anti-aircraft guns and will give his position away by shooting at it, and then I get detected again. So I've now been detected on both sides of this island off to my left, which must mean that whoever's spotting me is spotting me from more or less directly ahead. And we've just sank the second last remaining enemy ship, which means that destroyer is the last enemy ship around, and I just get it confirmed in chat there, and it turns out that the enemy team had AFK problems of their own as well, because it turns out that the enemy destroyer has been AFK the entire match, and according to what the enemy team are saying, he's more or less in exactly the position that I thought he was. But I am going to be cautious, because I have been caught out like this before. Just because a player hasn't actually done anything the entire game does not mean that they're actually away from the keyboard. I've come across enemy ships that have been sitting in the spawn the entire game, and they only just lurch into life and catch you with a surprise torpedo ambush when their ship starts taking hits. And there he is, he's a Minakaze, and I am well inside his torpedo range, so if this guy isn't actually AFK, well, I'm certainly not going to be sailing on the same course and speed while I'm lighting him up with my guns. So I'm giving him a good pummeling with a 180mm guns, but I've got my hands ready to initiate a WASD hack and avoid any torpedoes that come in my direction. And he's certainly not pointing his guns at me, which does kind of appear to indicate that he is just as AFK as the enemy team have been saying he is. And bingo, there we go. So that was my first ever ranked battle, and my first ever win, and my first promotion to rank 21, and my first set of loot for taking part in ranked battles, and managed to finish top of the team on experience, which was, you know, nice. And a pretty bad result for most of the enemy team, particularly the Minakaze, who's probably lost a rank because of that for being AFK. The Molotov on the enemy team finished top on experience, so he wouldn't normally lose a battle star. However, he's rank 20, so he's not going to lose any battle stars anyway, so that was a pretty bad result for the entire enemy team. Now, I won my next couple of battles and made it as far as rank 20 pretty easily, collecting even more loot along the way. And it wasn't until I reached rank 20 where I started running into some problems. The teamwork doesn't have to be exceptional to be in a ranked battle. You know what the standard of online play is like in your average multiplayer game. Your team just has to be halfway competent in order to usually run rings around the enemy. But it wasn't until I reached rank 20 that I started getting, well, you know, those kind of teams. The kind of team that just starts arguing amongst itself over what they're going to do and where they're going to go before the battle's even started. The kind of team where the majority of the team comes to a consensus about which flags you're going to cap first, but there's always one person who disagrees loudly and violently in chat and insists on just going off and doing his own thing, and usually dying. The kind of team where you've got Captain Angry shouting at everybody in chat all the way through the match, dies early, sucks out, and then complains about what everybody else is doing, and this was one of those games. So, I'm in the Gremyashki, Soviet Premium Tier 5 destroyer. Torpedoes are alright, guns are very, very good, but the big limitation with the guns is they have a very, very slow turret rotation speed. They do have good range, they do hit hard. They actually fire decent armor piercing as well, which we'll demonstrate later on in this replay. But the limitation of the ship is the turret rotation speed of the guns, so it really works best as a gunboat if you can keep the enemy at maximum range, where you don't actually have to turn the turret very far to be able to track a target. Bearing that in mind, since the ship that I'm in works best at long range, and since I am fast, and we do have the destroyer advantage this time over the enemy team, we've got 2 destroyers to their 1, we also have a Fujin on our team, and we're going to be hearing plenty from him during the course of this battle. Now, bearing all of these factors in mind, what I wanted to do was head over there and cap A, because A, I'm fast, and B, I don't have as good a stealth rating as the Fujin class destroyer that's the other destroyer on our team. He's a much more sneaky ship, he's a Japanese destroyer. So, capping B here, well, it's going to be dangerous for him too, it's going to be far less dangerous for him. And yet, he is heading straight for A, and there's absolutely no point when you've got 2 destroyers on your team and the destroyer advantage, both of your destroyers, and what looks like one of our cruisers as well, all heading to cap A at the same time. So I don't really want to drive into B because it's a shooting alley, especially with all these aircraft, but somebody has to, and it's going to be me. So I'm popping a smoke screen, I'm slowing down, but I have been detected by aircraft, then I'm not detected, which means I can't just sit here stationary, otherwise people are going to be shooting at my last reported position. So I can't just sit in this smoke screen. I need to adjust my position enough so that I'm not just going to get blind fired by all the cruisers that are just taking pot shots at where I was last seen. And I have remained undetected for a good few seconds now. I should be relatively safe here. I've almost capped, and as soon as I've capped, I'm sitting in a smoke screen. I'm clear to start shooting up these cruisers. I'm going to start with the Cleveland. I've got the armor piercing loaded because the 130mm guns on the Gremyashki are actually not bad against cruisers with the armor piercing, particularly if you've got the big black broad sides of them to shoot at, like I have on that Cleveland and shortly that Molotov. So I start taking the Cleveland under fire with the armor piercing. Now, this smoke screen does have an expiry date. I cannot just sit in here forever, so I need to be ready to move at a moment's notice. First blood goes to the enemy team. One of the enemy carriers, well, the enemy carrier, sorry, manages to get a detonation on one of our cruisers, so he's just been wiped out. Matters are not helped by one of the battleships on our team who's just constantly spamming chat, and what he has to say is not helpful at best and downright insulting at worst. So yes, it was one of those teams. The Cleveland's now out of range of my guns, and my smoke screen is not going to last forever, so I've started to speed up in anticipation of the smoke screen dissipating. I do not want to be caught in front of all of these cruisers, immobile in the water in a visible destroyer. So I start shifting my fire to the Molotov. You'll notice that the Fujin on the team is actually closing right in. He's right at the southern end of the B flag circle, and it looks like he's trying to get a torpedo attack against these enemy cruisers. He's a Fujin, so he has a 6 km surface detection range, and his torpedoes have a 7 km range, so I technically have better torpedoes than him, but he's got way, way better concealment. And that's when we spot the enemy destroyer, and it's a kamikaze. And he's getting far too close for comfort. In fact, he's starting to shoot at me, and I don't like getting shot at when I'm in a destroyer. So I turn and head about. Now, I'm momentarily unable to actually start shooting at anybody because of the slow turret rotation speed of the Gremyashki. And I've taken a hit, and I think that Cleveland is looking to get some revenge here as well, judging by the volume of fire that's heading in this direction. But I finally managed to get my guns around, and that Fujin just took a big old hit and got spotted. So they're going to be shooting at him rather than me, so I can afford to take my time and line up some shots on this Molotov. Still got the armor piercing loaded. Mixed results. I've had some good hits, I've had some not so good hits, but I do, surprisingly, when the Molotov's in the turn and I don't have the side of the ship to shoot at, manage to score a citadel. Which is nice. Meanwhile, Captain Angry in one of our battleships up there in the top right corner of the map is basically spamming chat, demanding that we all stop what we're doing and we go and help him do not much of anything, really. He's been sailing backwards for the last couple of minutes. We're engaged in a furious gunfight over here, and he's basically demanding that we all just stop what we're doing and divert to assist him while he sails backwards for a little bit more. No, actually, we're a little busy. Screw you, I'm going to stay down here and support the battleship that's actually doing something. He actually has the massive brass balls to call this New Mexico down here with us useless. Wait until you see what this New Mexico does later on in the match. It's not going to take too long. Remember, the battleship up there, he's busy pinging the map and demanding support when he's not being attacked by anything, is calling the New Mexico down here, who's right in the thick of the action, useless. Just bear that in mind. Meanwhile, our Fujin, who has so far not managed to sink anything, has once again managed to miss that Molotov with every torpedo that he's fired. Which, to be completely fair, is no real criticism of the Fujin. I mean, if you're in a cruiser that's even halfway paying attention, then it's not too difficult to avoid torpedoes that have been fired at you at range from a destroyer. And I'm pretty sure the Fujin had been spotted. Now, we still haven't managed to sink anything, and I don't want to let that Molotov get away on low health. Unfortunately, the Molotov's fast, and I can't quite catch him, so I'm in hot pursuit here. You can see the torpedoes that the Fujin fired at him. They're never going to catch him. And check this out. That Fujin is around about 2.5 kilometers in front of me when we spot the enemy kamikaze. The kamikaze is at a range of 8 kilometers, which means that the distance between the Fujin and the kamikaze, when they both launch torpedoes at each other and start shooting at each other, is going to be around about 5.5 kilometers. That kamikaze had actually launched his torpedoes before we saw him, so that meant his torpedoes were in the water at a range of at least 5.5 kilometers from that Fujin. He starts shooting at him, but look at the gap between him shooting and pay attention. There we go, bang. The Fujin's just been sunk. And the kamikaze has only just started firing again. That means the Fujin just ran into a torpedo fired by an enemy destroyer from a range of at least 5.5 kilometers. Hang your head in shame. Meanwhile, do you remember Captain Angry? Valiantly guarding the top right corner of the map from absolutely nothing. Well, he's still guarding the top right corner of the map, only this time it's from an enemy Auber-class cruiser. And he's reversing at full speed as fast as his little steam turbines will carry him in case that big, nasty Japanese cruiser scratches his paintwork. At this point, there's absolutely no point in my turning my anti-aircraft guns off, so I'm adding my own firepower, and I did actually manage to shoot down one of those torpedo bombers before they could get some torpedoes in the water against the New Mexico, who's with me and is actually doing some useful things in the course of this battle. And it's actually me and this New Mexico who are going to take care of this Auber for Captain Angry over there in the New York. And we actually catch this Auber as he turns around, and I score a couple of crippling hits on him, but it's Dr. Sadek in the New Mexico who lands the killing blow, and bang, there it goes. So Dr. Sadek is actually the first person on our team, there he is in his New Mexico, the first person on our team to sink an enemy ship. This is the guy who's an idiot, according to Captain Angry in the New York. And it's at this point where, irony of ironies, the guy in the Fujin starts demanding to know what the hell I think I'm doing. Remember, this is the guy that managed to get himself torpedoed in a destroyer from another destroyer at a range of at least 5.5 kilometers. And he's demanding He's demanding to know what the hell I think I'm doing. Meanwhile, Captain Angry in the New York, the guy who hasn't moved more than a kilometre from his starting position this entire match, and has spent most of the match sailing backwards, he's calling us all campers. No, really. Anyway, I don't want to bore you with the details of the rest of this match. Suffice to say, the team lost, and deserved to lose. In fact, I didn't want this team to win. I felt particularly sorry for the guy in the New Mexico, because he played well. But as things worked out, well, it didn't really matter, because the New Mexico is ranked 20, so he's not going to lose a star. I'm ranked 20, so I'm not going to lose a star. And even if I hadn't been ranked 20, I finished top on experience, so I'm not going to lose a star. But Captain Angry in the New York, and Shit for Brains in the Fusion, they're rank 18 and rank 16, so they did lose a star. And, well, I'm just going to call that one poetic justice. We're going to close off this video with a battle that got me to rank 18, and the last ranked battle that I played before heading down to the Armour and Embarkation event in Dorset this weekend. And straight away from the very beginning of this match, you can just tell it's going to be better. Because the team talked to each other, and I mean talked to each other. They didn't just hurl abuse at each other and argue with each other at the beginning of the match, which is how you can always tell the game's going to be a disaster. Somebody suggested a plan, nobody had any objections, and the whole team stuck together and did it. And when you put it like that, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Why would you need to argue? And yet, people do. I'm in the Aoba this time, Japanese Tier 6 cruiser, and a very, very nice ship. Unfortunately, there are no aircraft carriers in this match, which means that my catapult fighter and my defensive fire cooldown are going to be just about 100% completely useless. Anyway, the team have decided, and nobody's raised any objections, that we're going to all head for C. We're going to cap that, and then we're going to immediately hook left and sweep through B. And, well, that's the plan anyway. No plan survives contact with the enemy, but that's what we intend to do. Now, as I'm heading towards C, because the Aoba is a pretty fast cruiser, and I should be able to get there and assist in the cap, along with the destroyer who's leading the way, I suddenly get detected, just as the enemy are capping B, which almost certainly means I've been spotted by the enemy destroyer, who's capping B in the centre of the map. And I don't want to get shot up by those two enemy battleships, so I immediately start changing my course and speed. Turns out, though, that I needn't have bothered, because I never actually come under fire from any of the enemy battleships, which indicates that they're probably lurking around right at the back of their team, you know, as battleships are wont to do. So that's kind of good news. Some bad news, however, was that our Cleveland was suffering from connection issues and is only now, as the battle is actually kicking off, joining the game. So it could have been worse. We could have been down a fair old chunk of our DPM against a fairly strong enemy team, but he has managed to at least get into the fight. But better late than never. Now, my evasive steering meant that I wasn't able to join our Minakaze in the cap over there and capture C. But it did mean that I managed to break contact with the enemy Minakaze, who was spotting me from inside B and has now just detected me again as our Minakaze closes in on B as well. Now, I've got armor piercing loaded here and I'm shooting at a destroyer, and that's not the best choice of ammunition, but I anticipated being able to fire at a whole bunch of enemy cruisers. And I'm not going to switch to high explosive here, because I just know that that Minakaze is going to stealth up again, and then I'm going to have high explosive to shoot at the cruisers that I can actually see. And I am definitely not sailing down that strait, because that is a lot of enemy ships and it would be suicide. And in fact, I am amazed that our Minakaze survived this with all of those cruisers shooting at him. I'm not spotted anymore though. The enemy Minakaze dropped a smoke screen. Our Minakaze dropped a smoke screen. None of those guys can see me now. But sailing down those narrows with all of those enemy ships, we're talking 4 enemy cruisers and possibly the 2 battleships at the back as well, that would be a death sentence. So there is no way I am following our destroyer in the shotgun alley over there. Instead, I'm going to go the long way around and see if I can introduce somebody to a dose of surprise butt sex. So I'm coming around the corner of these islands hoping to get a torpedo shot off against that New Mexico, but nope, not going to happen. He's on the other side of yet another island, so oh well. Switch to the guns, get the armor piercing loaded, and start shooting up this Badioni. Now, I've been detected, but that doesn't mean that the guy sailing the ship is aware that he's about to come under fire from an Aoba. And in fact, his guns are still firing south, so I should at least be able to get the first salvo off. And you know what? I'm going to put some torpedoes in the water, because, hey, you never know, he might sail into them. And, yep, I've managed to score a Citadel, so he is probably aware, and in fact, is that him, or is that the Nürnberg behind him? Either way, it doesn't matter. It's 2 cruisers against 1 cruiser. It's exactly the kind of fight that they want to be getting into, and it's exactly the kind of fight that I don't want to be getting into. So I'll take some shots and I'll do the damage that I can, but I am not hanging around in a 2 versus 1 engagement with 2 very powerful cruisers. I could win, but it would rely on getting lucky, and if you rely on luck to carry you through your games, well, get used to losing a lot of the games that you play. So I am getting out of here. Unfortunately, I have to execute a pretty tight turn, which means I'm going to have to slow down right when I really don't want to be slowing down, because I've got the broadside of the ship showing, but I don't take too much damage. That's definitely the Nürnberg firing at the back there. And the Badioni's going to be firing as well. The turrets on the Auber turn pretty slowly, but I've managed to get them around, and I'm scoring more damage on the Badioni. And I haven't taken that much damage in return, but I'm not going to stay lucky forever. I need to get this thing underway. And I've been hit, and I'm on fire. I'm in a cruiser, not a battleship. I put the fire out. Oh, crap. Oh, and I've managed to citadel him again, which is great. But my... Oh, am I going to run aground? I really, really hope not. Here it comes. Oh, I think I might have just a little bit. But I just managed to squeeze through. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because... Have a look at the map. Here comes the cavalry. Here's the rest of the team. And now that Badioni over there has just found himself in exactly the kind of situation that he doesn't want to be in. He's now low on speed, having executed a high-speed turn, and he's got the broadside of his ship now showing to multiple enemy guns, not just mine, and he's dead. And finally we're ahead. Although not on points. The enemy team still do have 2 of the 3 cap circles, but we're ahead on kills, 4-3. Well, I'm doing nobody any good heading in this direction, so I'm going to pull a hard right turn Clyde just as I clear this island and then rejoin the team steaming north. And that does look a lot like an enemy New Mexico, and he's not quite inside torpedo range. But, well, maybe if... Ah, he's gone. Well, I'm going to pick him up again in a second once I clear the straits here, and if I just nudge a little bit closer... And I've been spotted, and yep, there he is. And now he is inside torpedo range. So let's see how much attention this guy's actually paying to what's going on around him. Scored a couple of hits. And he is shooting at me, so he knows I'm here. And he has in fact scored a hit. So torpedoes in the water at a distance of about 9 kilometers. And it does look like he's turning. And he knew I was there. And I'm a Japanese cruiser. I have torpedoes, so I don't expect any of those torpedoes to hit. But I'll keep lighting them up with a high explosive for as long as I can while I rejoin the rest of the team heading north. Unfortunately, while I was taking pot shots at that New Mexico, he's managed to sink another one of our ships. So the Cleveland that was steaming north with the friendly New Mexico that I passed on the way down here and then turned around to head back up north, he's now heading south to try to head off that enemy New Mexico that I just fired those torpedoes at, in case he tries to head down and cap C, which would be very, very bad. So well done to the Cleveland for paying attention to the map, and wouldn't you know it, I did manage to hit the New Mexico with a couple of torpedoes, because, hey, battleships, I mean. But I can't hang around to celebrate for too long, because we've got an enemy New Mexico and a Nürnberg, and they're both shooting up our New Mexico, who now, aside from me, is completely alone up here. The thing about ranked battles, it doesn't matter whether you live or die, providing your death helps your team win. And I don't fancy that Cleveland's chances against a New Mexico alone down south. So what I'm going to do now is going to take out both of those enemy ships, but it's probably going to cost me mine, which should leave our New Mexico with a good fighting chance against the enemy New Mexico, who I know is on low health because I just hit him with a bunch of torpedoes. It's going to take a while for my torpedo tubes to reload on the port side of the ship. But the torpedo tubes are ready to go on the starboard side of the ship, so I'm reserving those for the enemy New Mexico. Now it's important that I kill this Nürnberg with the guns. So that's what I'm going to try to do. But he's a German cruiser, and I know that he has torpedoes. So, come on. Come on. Torpedoes away. And he's turning. And you can actually see the torpedo launchers in the side of the ship pointing straight at me. And I know I'm not going to survive this, but it doesn't matter, because I've got him. And I'm dead, but wait for it. Wait for it. There's a certain grim inevitability to it all, isn't there? Battleships just don't change their course and speed. So there's the high caliber, it's just a flesh wound, and some other metal, probably a devastating strike. Which just leaves our New Mexico, who still has most of his health, because I basically took out the Nuremberg and the enemy New Mexico for him, against the enemy New Mexico, who's taken multiple torpedo hits and has probably set on fire by that friendly Cleveland before he killed him. So there he is, Abrick in our New Mexico, thanking me for basically saving his ass there. It's entirely possible that Abrick isn't an idiot and knows exactly what he needs to do here. He needs to take out that enemy battleship, obviously, but he needs to do it by sailing through B, because if he doesn't kill him, because that guy has broken line of sight and is going to be steaming around that island to get into C and take that off us. And if you can't kill him, you've got to sail into B, so that the enemy team don't win on points. He might be fully aware of this, but it doesn't hurt to go over it again in chat, just in case. And he's definitely going for it, and then disaster strikes. At 8,000 health remaining, the enemy New Mexico pops out of line of sight, and Abrick fires a shot with his rear turrets and sinks him. Good shooting, sir. Jolly well done. So that was the ranked battle that finally got me to rank 18. It didn't really take that long, and I certainly got plenty of loot out of it, and I think I completed a mission or two as well. Let's have a look. Yes, I did. So 319,000 credits and 7,247 XP, and yeah, unsurprisingly, with high caliber, top of the team on experience earned. And so these ranked battles are pretty much all that I've really been doing in World of Warships, at least for the last week or so. I really haven't been touching the random battle queue anymore because, well, for two reasons. One, if you're any good, when there are only 7 players on a team, it's much easier to have an impact on the outcome of the battle than when you're just one of 15 players on the team. And also, the rewards are just too good to ignore. Even if you never get any higher than rank 15 or 16, which, let's face it, most people probably won't, but even if that's all you achieve, you're going to pick up a couple of hundred signal flags and a whole bunch of premium camo schemes for your ships, just by being not particularly bad at the game. So, World of Warships, ranked battles. If you ask me, the return that you get on the investment of your time is definitely worth it. I basically haven't been doing anything else. And I'm definitely going to be plugging away at this until I reach the limit of my competence. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, take care, have fun playing whatever you're playing. And I'll catch you next time.